Hello, bonjour. Bienvenue à notre conférence d'aujourd'hui, Femmes inspirantes. Je suis Sarah Paquette, la directrice et présidente de CANAF, et aujourd'hui, j'ai le grand plaisir d'être ici avec Stéphane Brutus, le doyen de Telfer.
Bonjour Sarah, I'm so very pleased to join you today to be part of this event, Inspiring Women. Donc, je suis le doyen de l'école de gestion Telfer à l'Université d'Ottawa et il nous fait grand plaisir de nous joindre à CANAF pour cet événement.
And thank you to all of you for joining us today and all our speakers that took the challenge to do this event with us. So we wanted to create an event that was inspiring. You will hear many stories that explore leadership, mentorship, and I hope that you will all feel motivated by this event. Our next speaker is going to talk about mentoring. And I just want to say that mentoring is so important. We all need to do it, but we also need to receive it. So every time I ask somebody for a session, I always assure them that I'm going to offer another session for it. And when I do coaching and mentoring, I do the same. That's the price to pay. You pay it forward. So now I'm going to go to the principal event.
So the Telfer School of Management is very proud to be a partner in this event. Personally, I'm a strong supporter and advocate for women in finance and developing young leaders. Me, myself, I would say that the main mentors in my career were all women. So I'm very proud and privileged to be part of the event today. So we'll hear many inspiring insights today. And I really hope that you'll leave this event feeling like you've had a series of excellent mentoring sessions. Donc, pour commencer, j'aimerais inviter Christy Duncan, de Women in Payments, à partager avec nous l'importance du mentorat.
Hello, I'm Christy Duncan, and as founder and CEO of Women in Payments, I am so delighted to be here with you and partnering with FinTrack and U Ottawa for this fabulous mentorship event. This is going to be a wonderful couple of hours coming up that I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy. And we're going to talk about mentorship and why mentorship is important. And for me, mentorship is really a fabulous opportunity for a relationship where you can explore different perspectives on career challenges, personal and professional relationships, perhaps work-life balance, or building your personal brand or your industry profile. All of these are things that typically mentors and mentees can explore together, and something that helps both the mentee, who's clearly gleaning some of the fabulous insights of the mentor, but also the mentor can benefit by paying it forward to the next generation of talent, but also by this concept of reverse mentorship, where the mentor learns from the mentee and they can learn about what makes the mentee what drives the mentee in terms of a corporate environment or new ways of doing things. They can also learn about things that the mentee might know more than the mentor. For example, technology. I know that's always my bugaboo. But that concept of reverse mentorship is really important and a great opportunity for both parties, the mentor and the mentee, to benefit. At Women in Payments, we have long recognized the importance of mentorship, and we run a global mentorship program. We're now in our 6th year. We run it twice a year, and it's an opportunity for mentors to be matched with mentees for a year-long relationship of mentoring. And we've got all kinds of toolkits and Q&As and FAQs and tips and tricks to help the mentors and the mentees really get the most out of that relationship. If you're interested at all, check out our website for more information. Cohort 11 will close on September 30th. So you're definitely encouraged to sign up by then, and we'd love you to participate. I personally think mentorship is a really big cornerstone in helping develop your career. And today, in this next few hours, we've got mentorship coming just fast and furious, and so many wonderful mentors as well as mentees who will be sharing their insights on how to position yourself for that next big career challenge. So I encourage you to dig in and savor the next couple of hours, either as a mentor or as a mentee. There's always something we can all learn, and have fun with it.
Merci, Christy. Alors aujourd'hui, on va entendre des femmes qui occupent des postes de direction de différents niveaux. Elles vont vous parler de leurs défis, de leurs résultats, et elles vont partager leur expérience. Alors, passons maintenant à l'événement principal. Our first segment is an insightful panel based on a unique format. Never have I ever. Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Stefan. I am so excited to be here and to kick off today's event with our panel. And I would like to begin by thanking our esteemed panelists for allowing me to live out my talk show host fantasy. For those who don't know, Never Have I Ever was a game that was played with celebrities on a popular talk show. And since we have some of our very own celebrities here today, I thought it would be a great way to engage them and to share a little bit about their experiences. So I'm going to be asking them a series of Never Have I Ever questions, and using the fanciest and most advanced technology, they will give us a thumbs up if their response is they have, or a thumbs down if their response is they have not. So we'll just check in quickly. Everybody's thumbs working okay? We're good. All right. If that's our biggest tech issue of the day, then we'll be doing quite well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists to you. We have Renia Llewellyn, President and Chief Executive Officer of Laurentian Bank, Stuart Davies, Executive Vice President, Financial Crimes Risk Management and Group Chief Anti-Laundering Officer at Scotiabank, and Tracy Black, President and CEO of Payments Canada. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Really excited.
Good afternoon.
Now, some of you may be wondering why we have a man on the first panel of an event called Inspiring Women. Those of you who you may have seen on the internet, there is a photo of a women panel on women in STEM, and all of the panelists are men. So, and that got referred to as a manel and was shared quite widely. We are not trying to have manels today, but both Sarah and I have been working on supporting women in underrepresented fields for the last number of years, and there's two things that have really been big lessons for us. And I'd say the first is the importance of allyship. And Stuart here today is a huge ally, huge proponent of women, and has 3 daughters himself, and also the danger of assumptions. And so this game that we're going to play today is going to help us both challenge assumptions, see where some people have similarities in their career experience, and learn a little bit more from some inspiring leaders. So with that, let's get started with our very first question. All right, so thumbs at the ready, everybody. And I'm going to start with our first question. Never have I ever been the first. So this could be the first in your family to achieve something, the first of your gender to achieve a milestone. All of you have come first before. Excellent. Maybe it was your grade 6 speech writing competition. Not sure, but awesome. So Renia, can you tell us a little bit about your being first experience?
Great. Thanks, Claire. Delighted to be here today. And I was just a little distracted by your dog coming into the screen. That was why, when you were welcoming us, I think we were a little
real life. At least it wasn't kids. And
yeah. So listen. I think it's the first thing that came to mind is obviously my recent appointment. It's almost been 2 years now, coming up to 2 years. But being the first female CEO of a major Canadian bank, and the impact that's had. To be honest, I underestimated the impact that would have on women and people like Stuart, who are dads of daughters. And so I initially, to be honest, took that for granted. And so that's probably the first thing that came to mind when you asked the question, Claire. And
why'd
so
you
that
take
was
it for granted.
I guess because I've worked really, really hard within the financial industry. I've been in the industry for 27 years. And yes, I was probably the first of being a woman in many boardrooms. And so after a while, you just become desensitized to the whole thing. And so when it happened, I did not appreciate the impact it would have, just in terms of, representation does matter. And so for people to see someone at a senior leadership role gives people hope that they too can make it. And so I did not appreciate the impact that would have, and also being an immigrant as well. And so it had an impact on so many different folds, whether it's being a female, being young as well. And, I'm sure lots of people out there too. I mean, there's discrimination on so many different fronts. And so I did not appreciate that it would have an impact both on the immigrant population, females, daughters, dads. And so the outpouring of comments and questions and was really overwhelming. And so now I feel a huge sense of responsibility to be maybe the first, but definitely not the last. And so how do we pay it forward, and how do we pave that future path for those to come after me?
I love that. I love that. So Stuart talked a little bit about daughters and examples. And so what have you been the first at, but also maybe picking up on a little bit of what Rania said about her experiences?
Yes. Well, thank you again so much for having me. And Rania's comments, as well as my own experience, really was impactful, not only to myself, but also my daughters. We packed up 3 bags apiece and moved up to Canada in 2013. Took my daughters out of public school system in Texas at the time, came up to Canada and said, what are we going to do? We had like 3 weeks literally to get our children oriented in school. My 3 daughters, 2 of them, especially one was already graduated and ready to start college. And so that was a huge experience on us. And I wasn't the first in my family to move. In fact, history has it that my family left Canada, left Kitchener back in the 1800s or so, and immigrated to New York. So in some ways, I'm coming back home, at least through the family heritage. But it's a totally different experience, leaving the suburbs and the comforts of America, coming to a new country. In some ways, I'm an immigrant as well, but recently got our citizenship and genuinely feel a part of Canada and have been able to make a huge impact here. And my daughters have gotten some great education, and they themselves are making impacts in their respective fields.
Awesome. Tracy, how about you?
Well, I think my answer is quite similar to Rania's in that I'm the first female CEO at Payments Canada, and I'm the first female CEO in my family. But I wasn't really thinking about the impact of that role, having a female CEO inside of Payments Canada. So I can echo Rania's comments. It was sort of a surprise to me how many emails or how many congratulations I received from other females inside the company and inside the industry more broadly. And looking backwards, I'm like, yeah, I guess this is a first. But I'm going to say one of the firsts that there are so many really in COVID and all of that. But one of the first that I'll own up to on this panel is I was probably the first CEO to cry at an all-staff meeting at Payments Canada. And they were tears of joy. But I think having a female CEO is different. Women are different than men, and I've found COVID to be a very emotional time for many people, and I'm included in that. And we had an in-person all-staff meeting earlier this year. It was the first time we'd had the whole company together since March of 2020. And to see everybody, we're a small company, we're about 300 people, so we can fit into a hotel ballroom. So seeing, not 100% of the employees, but, close to 100% of the room after 2 years, oh, this is who we are. It was just it's just giving me goosebumps actually thinking about it here. But yeah, I just let it rip. I cried, tears of joy to see everybody in person. And, I thought, is this a career limiting move? What are people going to think about this? And it was fine. I think everybody just respected the fact that it was an emotional moment, and it felt quite liberating to be able to express emotion in that way.
Do you think men and women are held to a bit of a different account when it comes to expressing emotions or, being emotional?
It's leveling. I think men and women are different. Women tend to be, I think we're just, we're more emotional. I think we just react differently. And I don't know how much of that is genetic versus ingrained. But I think that, if this had been 10 years ago and I cried, I think it would have been seen as a sign of weakness. Whereas I think it was actually, I'm hoping, that it was more a sign of authenticity and just not being able to control my joy, and the sense of being so proud of everybody and all the things that we'd accomplished, and being able to tell everybody in person in one room was just such a, that would have been a normal part of life if we hadn't been locked down for 2 years. So I think COVID has leveled the playing field and changed our expectations around how we communicate and how we express our emotions.
So Tracy, I don't want you to feel alone. So
did you cry too?
My management team is used to see me cry, and I told them it was funny, and it was actually the first time they saw me cry. I would say was it was my I had been on the job for a year, and they surprised me with a word cloud, and I was actually in my daughter's bedroom in a virtual Zoom meeting, and my husband was walking in, and I was shooing him out, telling him I got a management meeting. But they had delivered something to my house, and it was words that they gathered from all of the employees in the organization, and it was very, very emotional. And I told them exactly the same thing. You're probably never seen your CEO or your boss cry, and so just get used to it. And hey, they probably have never seen a CEO of a bank dance at a employee event, and there's photos on LinkedIn proving it, and so that's okay too. So. I do think, though, just to answer your question, Claire, I think, yes, we are held to a different account, but I also feel there's pressure on men to hold their emotions and not to share their emotions. And I do think that that's a different type of pressure, right? In terms of, I think we feel the expectation that, it can be viewed as a sign of weakness, which I do agree with you, Tracy. I think COVID leadership is redefined in terms of empathetic leadership, authentic leadership, just being true to yourself and being human. That's part of actually our value proposition at Laurentian Bank is we're the more human bank. And so how do you connect on a human level? And that's really through emotions. And so, but I do feel for our male counterparts, because a lot of times society tells them toughen up and don't show your emotions. And so I think we need to understand both sides of how we are impacted differently. But Tracy, it feels good. I don't cry all the time, but they know I'm a mom. They know, I'm emotional. And plus I'm Middle Eastern. Middle Eastern people are emotional to begin with. So, yes.
I love it. So then throw it to Stuart, because I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
I'm not sure I've cried at work, but I have had genuine concern for my staff, my employees, my people. And, seeing some of the challenges our teams went through during the COVID times, as well as when you get to those tough management decisions about organizational redesign, what can you do that's best for everyone? And you take those emotions home, you take them personally, and you struggle through those and you work through them. But really what, looking back and you're always asking, what can I do best for my team, right? Because sometimes work is more of a friendship. It's more of a relationship than it is just coming in, clicking the buttons and doing the numbers. And that's how I lead. And that's, why there's always emotion at work. But it may not be expressed through crying. It's expressed through genuine empathy, caring, a handshake, a pat on the back when and if that's appropriate. Those things are really important, I think. And there is pressure, I think, in some circumstances on men not to be emotional, and it tends to be in those tougher, non-empathetic environments. I can think of sometimes you think sport, is it emotional? Yes, when you win, when you have the victory, when you achieve. But if you're just out there playing the game in the middle of the game, it's not the time to be emotional. So there's pressures on both sides, I think, for both men and women.
Have you seen, Stuart, over your career, a change in the expectations of leaders? I've read recently about more expectations being on leaders' shoulders from being empathetic, from being vulnerable in leadership. It's not just about the tough decisions, but it's moved to be about the people. Is that something you've seen in practice?
Oh, absolutely. I never heard the word empathy in my first 10 years of career, right? It was, the good old boys club and some of the banks I worked for. It was the situations where, you just tough it out, suck it up, tough it out. That's how business was done. There were companies that prided themselves on never laying anyone off. And, it was the ego factor that drove everything. those times change, especially toward the latter part of the 90s, and it was a welcome change. Empathy came into the dialogue, building trust, the words relationships, all these started becoming part of the leading companies.
And what do you think your role is? You mentioned the word Old Boys Club. So as a man who may have been a member of the Old Boys Club at some point or another, what is your role in challenging that mentality?
Yeah, I think I was too early for it. I felt like the oppressed, quite frankly, at that time in my career. But you do have to challenge it, and it's really up to leaders, male or women, to create opportunities for others, invest in others, encourage them to get out and take risks. And I mentioned my move to Canada. That was a big risk-taking move, right? And my wife was supportive. My children were supportive, but getting us in that mindset to take risks and have people advocate for me. I had people encouraging me to move, creating a career opportunity, being willing, being flexible to help me be successful in that environment was important. And so this theme of allyship and sponsorship, that's the big difference. So if you're seeing an organization with that, and there's still some out there, right, that are cliquish, and only those that follow certain paths in their career are going to get to the next level. I think those stereotypes need to be challenged, but done so in a thoughtful way, not in a divisive and bitter way, but one that helps people open up their minds to the new possibilities.
Awesome. So you mentioned struggling or tough decisions a minute ago. So we're going to move to our next never have I ever question, which I'm sure many of you have faced this as you are in leadership roles, but also probably in life as well. So it's never have I ever struggled to trust my own voice or my own intuition. Have you struggled to trust your voice? Or are you one of those people who've always known exactly what to do? Like my 10-year-old, I don't think she has ever struggled to trust her own voice or intuition, and I am always wrong. Tracy, let's start with you this time. When have you struggled, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think as you gain more experience in the workspace, and I guess in life generally, you start to trust your own voice more and more. But I would like to chat about a job that I took. I was relatively early in my career. I had 3 young kids, big mortgage, needed to make sure that I was employed. I just, I took a job that didn't sit in my gut the right way. I just figured I could manage my way around it. It just didn't feel quite right to me. And I took the role anyway. And it didn't take long for me to figure out that I really should have, listened to my gut. But I think extenuating circumstances made me quite anxious to ensure that I had a role and it was the best option of the jobs that I was looking for. And I've learned, that was an experience, they happen all the time. But that was, I learned a lot about what I am looking for in a role, what's important to me as I take a job. And I would encourage people, unless there are other extenuating circumstances, because often there are financial implications or, other implications, but to really think about what is important for you as an individual in an employment opportunity. You spend so much of your time at work, and so much of our self-worth, I think, is tied into how we feel we're performing at work and the feelings that we have about the job that we have and the people that we work with and, the manager that we report to. It's important. What I learned is that, trust and respect are very, very important to me. And I can actually work with people or for people that I might not like much, as long as I trust them and respect them. Other people may have a different order of operations on those things, but it was a lesson that I have leveraged multiple times. And I think I've made better choices as a result of that experience. And I'm actually grateful that I had it early in my career.
And did you stay in that then job for a little while, or were you able to move on from that? And what was that decision process like?
I was in that role for under 2 years, and I had another opportunity that kind of dropped out of the sky. That was, it was a stretch. It was a risky opportunity for me. But I figured it was worth trying. And I've been quite fortunate in that often opportunities present themselves. You just have to be receptive to them. And depending on where you are in your role, where you are in your personal life, I think your receptivity changes. As you might imagine, being in this job where I felt uncomfortable and not well matched to the culture of the company, I was very receptive to other opportunities, and I took a risky job that I might not have taken, or I almost certainly would not have taken if I'd been in a job where I felt like it was a better fit or more secure, in my position in that organization. So things happen. I was receptive. The door opened. I said, okay, let's give it a try, and that actually ended up being a huge pivot point for me in my career. So. Not only did I get a lesson, I also, I probably wouldn't be on this panel with you today in this role if I hadn't decided to take that pivot opportunity.
So
but man,
were you
it
glad
was
that you didn't trust your gut?
no. I wasn't experienced enough to know that my gut was worth trusting. Yeah,
Right.
and I think that's what I've learned over time is that you build on that experience base and you become much more self-aware, as well as understanding what the ecosystem is like around you. And I think you just sort of de facto start to make more informed choices without actually thinking about it. And I felt pushed into this one. And I've learned, like, my gut it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And, so the next step was, okay, my gut doesn't like this. How do I articulate this in a way that helps people understand what I'm thinking about this that's different and why? But that's probably a whole other question.
Rania, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I'd love to pick up on Tracy's theme of self-awareness and experience, because you're absolutely right, Tracy. I mean, until you go through that, it's hard to trust your voice. The first thing that came to mind when you asked the question, Claire, is a lot of people can't believe it, but I was a very shy kid growing up. I have video clips that prove that, but I was extremely shy, middle child. Had to move from Kuwait to Egypt, youngest person in university, and then so always struggling to kind of find that voice. And I was the kid in class where I knew the answers, but if a professor asked, I'd look at my shoes because I'm like, I don't want to speak in public. And then I came to Canada and graduated from university with a double major and couldn't find a job. My name was not Llewellyn at the time, and so again, I was really struggling with, like, how do you actually fight for what you want? And that's when I realized, like, I have a voice. And so how do I need to get heard. And so how do you get heard? And I've been, raising my kids, telling them that. I give advice to everybody saying that, in terms of, if you don't ask, you don't get. What's the worst thing that can happen? Someone just says no. Right. And so it's really, really important to leverage our voice and have the courage to speak up. And so whether it's in a meeting where everyone probably has the same question, so what's the worst thing that can happen? It's just what words do you use to actually articulate the question and position in a way. So I think it's really, really important to, if you have a seat at the table, then you have the right to speak up, and you should have the courage to have that voice. And so that's actually, and so talking to what Tracy was saying, that's why culture is so important, is how do you create that inclusive culture so that everybody has a voice at the table? Because that's how you're going to innovate. So, organizations have done a great job in terms of recruiting, diverse talent, but if you don't give them a voice, then you're actually not tapping into that talent from an innovation perspective. And from that creativity. So that's why, over the last couple of years, we've been building that culture at Laurentian, which is everyone belongs here, and giving everybody a voice, because that's how we're going to be more innovative. And that's how we're going to, create a better institution. Because, as Tracy had mentioned, the tone is set from the top from a culture perspective, and being self-aware. I always tell people, describe to me an environment, and that's usually in all of my interviews. Now I'm giving you some secret sauce. When are you at your very best? Because I know when I'm at my very best, right? And so you need to be aware of that, because that's how you can actually make decisions going forward in terms of, this isn't going to work for me, right? And so you have to be really, really crisp and articulate, but that comes through experience, as Tracy said. And then, you start doing it without thinking. As you get more experience, you start saying, you know what, remember when I made that wrong decision? And it's okay. It's how do you learn from those decisions? So it's actually taking a moment to reflect on those decisions, saying, how am I going to do it differently? What could I have done differently? And obviously we're all products of our environments as we went through all these different experiences. So we wouldn't be here today if you didn't sometimes make right choices versus wrong choices, but how do you learn from those choices and those decisions? But yeah, you don't ask, you don't get.
I love that, and it's interesting because it seems like we've evolved from organizations where we want people to fit a mold, right? They need to fit in the mold of what is acceptable. Both, I mean, you want people to buy into the corporate culture, but now as we look at being more aware of and celebrating neurodivergence, people who think differently, people bringing things to the table, we have to think about that table, I think, a little bit differently as well, because, and my dog will not get out of this picture. I don't know what she's doing. I may come on.
Yeah.
It's like having the, this is the COVID puppy, so this is the fourth child. But being able to create that environment and create that table where it's not always a traditional way in which we hear those voices as well. And I've seen that as, so I'm neurodivergent myself. And I've seen that in the last few years. When I started my career, I never would have mentioned it to anybody. I never would have said, I think differently. I can be a bit impulsive. I can hear some of it. And it was actually Sarah, our host for today, a couple of years ago, when I talked to her about it privately, she said, did you ever think that some of the things that you think are your weakness are also your strength?
Mm-hmm.
And it really had me pausing, because I thought I was struggling to trust my voice and intuition, because I felt like I thought very differently than people, or I acted differently than people. And I was really trying to fit that one mold. And just hearing that from a senior leader really changed my perspective. And so, shout from the rooftops, I'm weird, I'm different, I think different, yay. But I think that's really, it's also like that. Don't just take that seat at the table, pull up another seat, right? As you're talking about the seat at the table, that comes to mind as well. Stuart, how about yourself with intuition, or watching others struggle to trust their own intuition, and what advice you'd give them?
Well, gosh, I can't see any differences between men and women on this topic. I'm identifying with everything you're saying, and I think you'll identify perhaps with my own experience. But I made a career move that I regretted as well, like Tracy did, but mine was driven for a different reason. I was feeling underappreciated in my role. I was the last one to leave the office of 170 people, because I had to, do all the paperwork and get everything in order. And this happened week after week after week. And I think in some ways I became a bit resentful and let my emotions get in the way to really force me to look for another job. I was enjoying that job, but it was hard work. And I left that and took a job in an audit function where I had to audit things, and everything was on a deadline, and everything was, had to follow a prescription in terms of a procedure, and you had these tests to do. And I didn't find that I enjoyed that very much, right? It was just not something that fit well with my personality. And, I took that job, and that job became a leaping pad for me to further advance my career, which was great. But I took that job all for the wrong reasons. I took it for the emotional reasons and trying to escape a situation that I thought was perhaps not best. And I think we've probably all been there at one point in our lives or career. But that's really, something I learned a lot from, and it's changed me to try to balance the emotion with the opportunity and get out there and chat with others before I make decisions. But emotions still play a role, I think, in every decision that I make. And it's just not all factual, and I don't think it can be. I don't think we're not just factual people, we're emotional people.
So what would you say to, oh, go ahead, Rania.
I was just going to say, Stuart, I mean, that's one thing I tell her they're feeling underappreciated is don't run away from something. Make sure you run to something, because you're going to make the wrong decisions when you're at that moment. So take the time to figure out, okay, well, what is it that will make you happy? Because it's true. I see it over and over again where people run too quickly towards something, and then they make the wrong decision, and then they regret it. And it's kind of like sitting on that email, like, right? Don't write it, but don't send it.
Don't
You'll
even write
probably
it, it's my
regret it.
opinion. Just write it in paper. Don't put it in
Yeah.
the computer.
Put it somewhere, but don't send it. Yes, yes.
So what's interesting is that's actually a psychological thing. You can tell that I'm really a scientist here. But there's something called frustration tolerance, which is where we struggle to sit with a feeling of discomfort. And so whether that is we need to send that email to let the person know that they were in the wrong because it's going to make us feel better that we're solving the situation, or to act really quickly on something without reflecting because there's that it's sort of an instinctual human need to not be uncomfortable. And so in cognitive behavioral therapy, they do work about sitting with discomfort and allowing those feelings of discomfort to be part of you and to pass. And so you're not just trying to impulsively change, right? Running away from something, not running to something, because the discomfort of being somewhere uncomfortable is too much psychologically for us. We're seeking comfort. So what would you then say to someone who is in a job or a position where they are feeling that discomfort? What's your best advice for them besides don't just run? So how do you manage that in a job that you're in?
I think
Stuart, go ahead.
Please. Yes, I think you would take stock. I mean, I personally, now take stock of what I have. And I try to focus really on the longer term opportunity. There was some, we all get placed in difficult career situations from time to time. And again, we may not like the environment. We may not get along with the people, but are you there to be, is that environment there to change you, or are you there to change that environment? And you really have to understand that perhaps you're the one that needs to be changed, and be willing and open to understand, to change, but change in a way that's positive with people that you respect or appreciate. But if you're not seeing that anywhere around, and you take stock of the situation and you give it enough time, then leaving is perhaps the right course of action, and can reward you down the road. But don't be hasty, I think, is the best advice, and seek the guidance of others.
Anybody else? Any other advice for somebody in a tough situation?
Yeah, I would just echo what Stuart said, but I'll go back to what Tracy was saying, which is really being clear on self-awareness. Like, when are you at your very best? What's the environment you best function under? What are your aspirations? And so if you're in a junior position, changing the culture is very difficult, right? So because the culture is set from the top. It's a little bit different when you're in a leadership position and you can actually change that culture. And so those are my personal experiences were early on my career, I didn't fit in. I was told, oh, you're too outspoken, you're too out of the box, you're too this, you're too that. And at one point I was actually told, you got 90 days to go find yourself another job. Very early on in my career. And that got me to kind of move from the Maritimes to Toronto and accept a job and take more risks because, it was more kind of a, just survival decision, to be honest, more than anything else. And it was the best decision I ever made. But what I realized is, cultural fit is so important. So going back to what Tracy was saying is that when can you bring your true self to work? And so culture is important early on, but you have to take stock. You have to do the homework yourself in terms of understanding yourself, what's important to you, have a plan, right? Because I always tell people, you go out and get advice from 10 people, you're going to get 10 pieces of advice. And that's going to cause more confusion for you. And so you really need to actually be aware of what it is that you're looking for, be crisp, do your due diligence. And if you're unhappy, do something about it. Because there's a lot of people that complain all the time. And I always tell them, but what are you doing about it? Right? So either it's kind of like what Stuart was saying, either you try to change that environment, but then you got to do something about it.
Right. I imagine same with ideas, right? It's that don't come to me with all the problems, come to me with some solutions, like put some investment in this. Stuart, you were going to say?
I'll just say a good indicator that you're not thinking right is if everything's always someone else's fault, then that's a pretty good indicator that your thinking's not right.
So you're going to be speaking to my children shortly and informing them that.
I think
How
you
about
grow
you,
out of
Tracy?
that.
Piece of advice for somebody in a tough situation.
Yeah, I would just add one thing. I know we've morphed off the original question, but I think if you find yourself in a role where you feel like it's maybe not the right organization for you, I would counsel anyone who's listening to this panel, work your network. Like, make a concerted effort to develop your network, and pick people carefully for your network. Pick people who understand you, who understand your abilities, who can advocate on your behalf and keep their eyes open. I mean, often that next opportunity is not one that you find for yourself. It's one that somebody in your network brings to you. And always be open. I think the days of always working for one company, things have changed. People move around much more than they did in previous generations. And it's actually not unacceptable now to have a new job every couple of years, either within a company or across companies. But I think, it's nice to have feedback and people who are looking out for you and your next opportunity. As well, Rania said, you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different opinions. I found with my network, actually, it's probably more like 2 or 3 different opinions across 10 people with one overarching theme, because I know a lot of consultants, and consultants like to think. But I think your network can actually, I think if I had leveraged my network, it was early in my career, so my network was very small. But if I'd had a better network of people who had worked with me, and not just your peers, you need a network of people who are, below you. I think I would have listened more carefully to what some of those people said about, like, you want to go and work there? Why are you doing that? But the network is important, not only as a sounding board, but also as a source of opportunity. If they see something, good network participants are going to let you know, like, there's an opportunity you should maybe take a look at. Even if you're not looking, just go check it out, because people are more receptive to that kind of thing now as well.
Definitely. I saw a post on LinkedIn that said, it was a visual, and it said, "Who's on your board?" And so we often think of mentors and look, okay, who's my mentor? I have a mentor. Good. I'm set to go. But it actually broke these out into who's your mentor? Who's your sponsor? Who do you go to for the tough advice? Who do you go to hold you up? Who do you go? And that, so that network idea, it's not all your eggs in one basket. It's not one person, but different people for different things, and having that kind of like the diversity on a team, that diversity of a network, and thinking that through. So I've been sharing that with students as as you're starting your career, start thinking about who can play these roles for you, who can be these people in your career, because you're going to need them, right? You're going to need that perspective. You all have senior executives have learned from that perspective and learned from those opportunities. And as you said, Rania, the advice may not always be correct for you, but you can learn and take value from the lessons that other people have had. Especially, I've worked there. You don't want to work there. It's a good lesson to have. So we're coming close to the end of our time, and I only got to 2 Never Have I Evers because you guys were amazing panelists who had great discussion for me. So instead of saying never have I ever to this last one, I'd love each of you to share with the audience today something that really inspires you, whether it is in the workplace, your community, at home, something about the future generation, something that's exciting you about work, really, and it can be more than one thing because we've got a couple of minutes, but where do you find your inspiration and what inspires you? So Stuart, we'll start with you this time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm really inspired by what I'm able to do within my job, but also in addition to my job. I have a fortunate opportunity of being in anti-money laundering and fighting financial crime, but that's really created a launch pad to work with the government, to work with NGOs, private organizations on fighting human trafficking, and more specifically, the launch of anti-online child sexual exploitation project we call Project Shadow here in Canada. Now, that's been rolled out for about 2 years. We've had record numbers of reports received, and these are children that are being rescued. Their lives are being impacted, hopefully in a positive way, and perpetrators are being, arrested or put behind jail, which is another positive impact. But this passion just hasn't stopped within Canada, right? We're getting ready to launch it in another country in the Caribbean. We've launched a prototype in the US. We're talking about it on a global basis. So it's an extension of the job that I think brings inspiration, not just to myself, but also to my team, because this takes a team to implement these types of projects. But more broadly within the just the working environment too, we've all went through a tough time the past 2 years with COVID. Many folks have lost people, we've lost friends, we've built new friendships, and learning how to work differently is the other thing that I think gives me a lot of passion. And how can we now come into this hybrid environment that we were probably all 10 years ago, or myself 5 years ago, saying I'd never really like working from home. I want people in the office and productive. My mind has shifted on that, and it's that thinking, I think, that brings new passion. When you have change, that's when you have the opportunity to bring passion. And we're now in this change environment, and frankly getting in a tough economic situation, it seems, globally as well, with a crunch on the supply chain. And so how are we being innovative at work? How are we looking for more effective and efficient opportunities with the way we do business? That's also inspiring. So give you a whole list of them, but I think the biggest passion driver is making positive impact in the community and the lives of others, that fortunately I'm able to do with this role. But it's something that just transcends this role, and many people can get involved.
I love that. And it's neat because a lot of people feel called to public service for those reasons, to make an impact. And
Yes.
And you don't get to hear about it as much in the private sector, about how inspiring an impact you can make, especially in the field that you're working in. So I think that's really neat. Rania, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I think as humans, you get inspiration from so many different areas: your family, your kids, your neighbors, but to me, I would say over the last couple of years, in the middle of COVID, I've been a banker for over 27 years, and I think I took it for granted until COVID hit. And banking is really a noble profession in the sense that if you think about it, it's the fabric of an economy, of a country. And so at the time I was running the head of payments. And so being able to deliver payments in the hands of those who need it the most through government subsidies and government support through CERB. And I think that was when I realized, how important banking is, and the impact that you have on every single aspect of the economy and lives, whether it's, buying your first home, or buying a car, or sending your kid to university, or like all those aspects that we take for granted. And so, yeah, I'm inspired when, I get an email from a happy customer. Recently, I had someone who contacted me and said, listen, my nanny needs a mortgage. Is there anything we can do for her? And at Laurentian Bank, our core target market is the underserved. And so we've got products and services that can do that. And so knowing that we were able to help this individual get her first home, which is her dream home, is absolutely inspirational. And to go with that is actually our employees who deliver on that service. And so, every time I'm sitting around, so the two areas I get the most inspiration from is when I have roundtables with my employees, in terms of the excitement, the passion, the commitment they bring into work every day, and then connecting it with how are we impacting the lives of every Canadian that's out there. And so I think that's where I get my inspiration. And that's when, if I spend too much time in head office, as I call it, the two areas where I get my energy back up is going out and seeing customers, or going out and seeing employees. And so I make sure I spend enough time in my calendar to kind of get that boost of inspiration, because I think, and that's why it's really important to know where you get your inspiration from.
That's a really good perspective. Tracy?
I agree with Randa's statement that inspiration comes from lots of places. And I'm just thinking about all the things that I do, and where the inspiration comes in each of those areas. And so I'm also inspired at work. Payments Canada is a public purpose corporation. It's an unusual entity, but it's a company that's had a purpose since long before COVID. And I am inspired by the dedication that Payments Canada employees show in their efforts to ensure that payments works, the payments industry works for Canada. We have an important role, and I think it all happens in the background. And we joke that, if we're not in the press, that's good news, because it means everything is working. So I just think the level of dedication and enthusiasm is very inspiring from the people that I work with at Payments Canada. In my other out of office experience, I'm really inspired by people who are doing things that they're passionate about. Whether that's watching, a runner on the side of the road who's a beautiful runner and is just clearly really enjoying their run. Like, I find that inspiring. I also spent during the COVID period a lot of time outside, and I just feel very grounded, and I get a lot of perspective just from being in nature. So I think that's something that I sort of always knew about myself, but I didn't really appreciate until I was by myself in front of the computer screen all day long. I spent a lot of time on the weekends outside, just in the winter and the summer. And I think that's something that I will continue to stay in touch with, even as we're opening up more. Just make it a point to be outside. And then it's also interesting to me to see what kind of hobbies my friends and family have picked up during COVID. So I don't, woodworking's in. I don't know if but expect a cutting board or a salad bowl from someone near you soon. But I'm just so excited that people have taken the opportunity to find things that really inspire them themselves, and I take great satisfaction and pleasure in watching people do engage in activities that bring them joy. I think that's something that I hope everybody can take away from this whole, as we exit out of the whole COVID experience, that they had an opportunity to understand or pursue a passion that they have.
What a wonderful way to end us off today, talking about passion and joy. And so lessons that I really took from you guys today, that know yourself, right? Know who you are, and get a good understanding of what inspires you, what drives you, what your values are, and then care about other people, right? I think that's care about other people. And I love that going out, Rania, to meet your employees and to meet your clients is something that inspires you. And you've got in kindergarten, so my son's off to kindergarten today, and they talk about filling your bucket, right? And you have to know what fills your bucket and what takes from your bucket. And you can take from someone else's bucket too. It's a whole, I think my kindergarten was far more Lord of the Flies than modern kindergarten. But I think that's it. Like you've all talked about how you find meaning, how you fill your own buckets, whether it's in the workplace or outside of it. But then also as leaders, what you need to do to give back to others and to help support others. So I am so appreciative of your time today. And now there's a cat in the background, a very old cat limping by. This is the virtual experience as we leave the COVID experience and get to go back into offices where less pets are in the background. And as I joked before, at least it's not children today. So thank you so much for your time. And to those of you who are watching us, I hope you enjoy the rest of our panels and discussions today. It's a great day, and I hope you find something inspiring that you can take with you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Claire.
you.
Thank you.
Well, never have I ever, with Claire's live animals in the background. I love it. So, un grand merci à Rania, à Tracy, à Stuart pour votre ouverture, votre humilité et puis vos judicieux conseils. Cette séance a été vraiment super stimulante. On peut vraiment voir la passion que vous avez pour vos rôles respectifs. On souhaite à tout le monde dans l'auditoire de découvrir un rôle qui vous amène une telle passion. Vous nous avez vraiment montré aussi comment être des leaders modernes qui investissent dans les autres, qui font preuve d'empathie, des qualités importantes dans le monde dans lequel nous vivons. Donc, grand merci. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Supriya Sial, Deputy Commissioner at the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. Supriya is a wonderful storyteller, you'll see. She's insightful, amusing, and thought-provoking. We are very lucky to get to hear from her today. So welcome, Dr. Sial.
Thank you, Stefan. Once upon a time, there was a kid who grew up very, very poor in dusty streets in India, but dreamed of life in another place, far away, full of wonder, where there was no shortage of food and everyone had warm clothes. You think that kid was me? No, that kid was Jamal from Slumdog Millionaire, which I imagine is the one Indian movie most people have seen. The thing that is common between Jamal and I, other than being from India, is that we both dreamed of places that weren't the place that we were in. At the time, I didn't know that my faraway place was Canada. In fact, growing up, the only thing I knew about Canada was that there were a lot of people in Canada called lumberjacks, and that all they did was cut down trees and yell, "Timber!" Fast forward to now, I was asked by Sarah and the other organizers of this event to tell my story. And my first thought was, well, what can I possibly say about myself for 20 minutes straight? I mean, certainly this is megalomania. The organizers had said TED Talk style, so I thought I'd revisit a few TED Talks of people telling their stories, and I'd figure it out. So I went to TED.com, I searched by story, and there were 4,432 results, more than a few. Ultimately, I landed up on this one TED Talk called The Clues to a Great Story by Andrew Stanton, who is a filmmaker who made Toy Story. My 3-year-old daughter, Indira, loves Toy Story. Her favorite is Toy Story 4, where the child is Bonnie, a little girl who has light brown skin and dark brown hair, like Indira. As the parent of a young, impressionable child with an ethnic name, I spend a lot of time thinking about the stories that Indira is learning from. Which stories does she witness? Whose voices does she hear? A few years ago, there was a study by the Gina Davis Institute on children's films. And in these films, female voices occupy a sum total of only 36% of the speaking time. Less than 1/3 of leading characters are female. 0.2% of leading characters in children's television are LGBTQ+. In the top grossing adult films of 2021, females still only made up 34% of all speaking characters. About 2/3 of the time, women literally don't have a voice. In the majority of the stories that my precious, precocious, observant little girl witnesses, she sees neither herself nor me. India is a beautiful country. The landscape is stunning, the colors vibrant, the food delectable. And yet, in the India that I lived in the family that I grew up in, discrimination and violence against women was such an everyday affair, so common that it shocked no one. When I was 7.5, my mother gave birth to her second child, who my grandmother and the rest of the family were convinced by the slope of my mother's abdomen was a boy. My sister wasn't a boy. My sister is the smartest, perhaps the funniest person you could meet. Even as a child, she had a photographic memory. But that she was a girl was a part of our father's descent into a near-fatal suicidal depression. That he survived, my other grandmother told me, was in no small part because I was almost as good as a son. And she was sure that I would help my sister become the same, so no one would be ashamed of us. 2005, the year I left, India's sex ratio at birth, how many girls are born relative to how many boys, was ranked 131 out of 134 countries in the world. Only 3 countries in the world were worse. Why? Because so many female fetuses in India are aborted because they are female. Female infanticide is not why I left, and for the record, I am unrepentantly pro-choice. And discrimination on the basis of sex, sexuality, skin color, whatever form of other you want to choose is by no means limited to India and is by no means absent in Canada or anywhere. My point is that women are silenced as adults, as children, even before birth. And that is bullshit. That needs to change. And the agents of that change also need to be women. Telling women's stories, my story, isn't about megalomania. It is about giving voice. Because our stories have the power to become part of others' stories. We have to step out of our silences and tell them, not dismiss them as irrelevant, not discount them as too vulnerable in the service of seeming capable, powerful. I have to tell you, for example, that I didn't spring from the bowels of the earth in this fabulous suit as the Deputy Commissioner of the FCAC. No, I started out as a scrawny kid from a poor family who loved stories that were great quests, a journey into the unknown to find something world-altering that would make everything better, where the protagonist fights the darkness for the people who can't, for justice. And so I decided to become a scientist, because science is the greatest quest of all. Disease, famine, space travel, stupidity, science is the cure. It's not a swashbuckling superhero in possibly tight pants and a cape. It is a likely exhausted woman in glasses and a lab coat who is going to find the something that'll make everything better, or at least some things better. Like Dr. Katie Carrico and the mRNA vaccine that is making life possible right now. So, much to the consternation of my family in India, where doctor and engineer were the only legitimate career choices, maybe lawyer if you really had to be artsy, I decided to become a scientist. It gave me a quest. Was I idealistic? Of course. I was 17. I wanted to change the world. Was there a tiny part of me that did it because I was tired of being a good girl and wanted to defy expectation and threaten the assumptions people made about me so I could carve out an identity for myself? Maybe. But science and I, we suited each other. We think the same way. Give me a rational argument. Prove your hypothesis. Works splendidly in the lab. Not so well when you're arguing with your wife, but hey, can't win them all. The desire to explore the breadth of what I could do, what my brain could do with my science outside of my laboratory, ideally at a faster pace than academia allowed, led me to the private sector. But the social justice piece of my quest, the piece that said, you wanted to use science to make something better for someone, for the greater good, it kept needling at me. And that is what brought me to the public sector, where I am today. And what I will leave you with today are two things that I have learned from my own story. One, life is more manageable if you give yourself the space to do more than one thing. Study more than one thing. Be more than one thing. A successful career has nothing to do with following a linear trajectory. It has everything to do with whether or not you feel like you're still alive and growing. And two, sometimes it is okay and it is important to be a threat. I am a queer, brown, immigrant woman in a biracial lesbian marriage with a biracial child. And I am a lover of all things dog. So much of what makes me me is threatening to someone, including the cat lovers here who are now on high alert because of my affiliation with dogs. In my life thus far, I have never seen anyone who looks or sounds like me on an interview panel for a job I have wanted. At those interviews, I always slip in the phrase, my wife for no apparent reason, but I do because I want to make sure I don't inadvertently end up in a discriminatory workplace. I slip it into media interviews, talks, like this one, so people can see what a garden variety gay person looks and sounds like. Those of us with stigmatized identities grapple every day with how much to challenge and how much to accommodate. But you know what? The older I get, the louder, prouder I am. Finding my voice, using it to declare my identity and my intention has saved me. It has given my quest more meaning. The world will try to create identities for you, show you a linear road that you need to travel towards success, try to silence you. And if you talk as loud as you want, travel any road you damn well please, and be whoever the hell you like, you will be a threat. But women who threaten the structures that have subjugated them are precisely the women we need. In the words of Beyoncé, don't try to lessen yourself for the world. Let the world catch up to you. And back to you, Sarah.
Merci, Supriya, d'avoir accepté l'invitation. Quelle histoire inspirante. Merci pour ton partage, ta franchise, ton authenticité. C'était vraiment fabuleux. Un grand, grand merci. Maintenant, nous passons au prochain item sur notre agenda. Not un agenda, mais vraiment notre événement. Alors, le prochain plaisir sera une armchair discussion with two very special persons. Lucy is a well-known former CBC journalist, and Michelle is probably the most inspiring person I ever met. So, je ne peux pas attendre leur discussion. À toi, Lucie.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today and to have this conversation with Michelle Kungle, someone who has inspired us all. So, Michelle, why don't we bring you in right now so we can learn a bit more about your incredible achievements at work and in life. So, hello, hi.
Hi, Lucy. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, I have worked in the financial sector pretty much since I left school. I play hockey, wheelchair hockey. I drive a vehicle, a modified vehicle, and I live on my own. So I have attendants who come in to assist me with activities of daily living. And I'm very proud to hold a full-time job and to live life to the fullest.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. And that was going to be my first question. Describe yourself. And so you've just done it beautifully. But I have a follow-up question. What position are you playing in hockey? Are you a good player?
I don't know if I'm a good player. I'll have to say yes, but I usually play forward. I stopped playing for a few years, but I was a scorekeeper most recently. When COVID hit, they opened up for a few weeks and I assisted in scorekeeping. I had to leave prior to getting this job, I had to leave due to my schedule at my previous job because I was working weekends, but I may join again this year. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, that's what a fun thing to do. And listen, if you have some extra time, the Maple Leafs could use your help.
Well, thank you. I'll apply to that too.
Yeah, I think it's maybe something to think about. So you mentioned that you're very proud of having a full-time job, and that is incredible. Can you just describe a little bit the type of work that you do?
Yeah, so currently I work in a full-time role. I've worked in the financial industry my whole life, pretty much since I've left high school. I started out in collections. I did a role where I was more doing administrative, and then I did credit adjudication. So I looked into people's applications for a new credit card and decided their credit limits, if they would be approved or not in general. And then I did another job where I was the voice on the other end of the phone when you lost your credit card or debit card. I also looked into bad money in and bad money out. And now I have a job where I'm able to work from home on a computer, and I'm full-time.
And so what drew you to the finance industry, first in the private sector and now in the public sector? What drew you to this line of work?
Yeah, I think I started off as a student, and I was able to get a job where they were hiring predominantly part-time students to do evening work after school. And you just work your way up. And I was able to network and get experience that I was able to pass on to other roles and to apply to different companies that maybe other people were going to, or my colleagues and peers had experiences with.
So, Michelle, let me ask you this. I mean, starting your workday and getting to your full-time job, getting to your desk, can you just take us through how you start your day and what it takes to get ready for your day? If you can give us a sense of that.
Yes, definitely. So first thing in the morning, I get up around 9:15 in the morning with the assistance of an attendant. So an attendant is someone who comes in and assists me with activities of daily living. They're not a nurse, so they're not there to provide medical care, but they can assist with like showering, feeding, making your bed, laundry, things like that. So in the morning, they come in and they assist me to shower and to cook. Usually scrambled eggs with salsa. That's my secret recipe. And I get my bags ready. I have a suction machine. So I have a C3 spinal cord injury, which means that the doctor broke my neck when I was born, and my spinal column is affected. So C3 is where it is affected on the spinal column. And so I'm on a breathing machine at night. The breathing machine has to have water added to it. And I also have a device called a suction machine that helps me to cough because I don't have the muscles to do that. So they pack those bags for me. And then usually around 10:30 in the morning, they're able to leave. And then I log in typically around 10:30, 10:45 and start work. I check my emails in the beginning of the day, and then I perform my expected tasks. And then at 9:30 at night, they return to assist me with dinner. It seems like a late dinner, but I work 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then they come back at 11:15 to assist me to wash the suction machine and to hook me up to the breathing machine for the night and to charge my power wheelchair.
So, Michelle, I mean, that sounds like a full-time set of responsibilities on top of your full-time job. How are you managing that?
Yeah, it is a very strategic way to manage everything. So I'm not the only one in my building that has these services. I have to work around other people in the program in my building. So if I want to wake up earlier, or if I want to go to bed later, it takes more effort because I have to call the staff who are responsible for the scheduling in my building and arrange it with them. So if you and I wanted to go to a movie tonight, I would have to pre-plan that because I would miss out on my attendance. They don't just come back when you call, they come back when the schedule allows.
Right. And even if you wanted to get up early to have a phone call with a friend or do something, in 2 days from now, you've got to start thinking about that like right now to plan it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so it's especially difficult over the weekend because they don't have staff, management staff to do those changes. I am lucky in that I work, and so the employment kind of trumps the people who stay home for most of the day. So if you're employed or you're in school, you do have the ability to change your bookings a little more freely. But it's not the easiest thing, and definitely in the winter is more difficult because that's when people go to school.
Yeah. Now, Michelle, you mentioned, you say easy there, like none of your life up until now has been easy. You've defied the odds, since you were born, pretty much. But now you are thriving. You are living independently. You're working full time. But you spent your first 14 years in a hospital. What do you remember of those days?
Yeah, that's correct, Lucy. So I lived in hospital for sick children for 7 years, and then at Bloorview for 7 years. They're both facilities in Toronto. And so for the first 7 years, it was more training. So it was learning about this device in my neck, which is a tracheostomy. It was learning about the breathing machine that I use at night, the suction machine. So primarily training and going to school, where I went to Sunnyview Public School, and they helped me get my wheelchair, get a walker, things that I would need to be able to get to school. And then when I went to Bloorview, it was more learning independence and trying to learn how to go downstairs and get your own food from the cafeteria, things like that. But I did miss out on many things that many people would know. So for example, instead of learning how to share or learning the weather, things like that, what a bell is, like when you go to class and they ring the bell to tell you to leave the class or that you're late. I did not know those things because my priorities were taken up learning about my medical training and my machines, my devices, how to live on my own, things like that. So my schooling looked very different.
So you not only have had to overcome that kind of a beginning and learning just life skills and how to go about you know, be in the world. And you show us daily what perseverance and resilience is all about, Michelle. Where did that strength come from?
I think my mom has been my biggest advocate. I have 2 brothers, so she had to deal with my brothers and raising them. But she very much wanted me to be an independent person. As I said, I drive and I work, and many people who have my disability, C3 spinal cord injury, do not have those opportunities. Typically, they live in the hospital with 24 hours nursing services. And I do attribute it to my mom being a huge advocate for me.
And giving you that sense of independence in many ways. She said, and I just want to quote her there, she said, quote, "Feeling sorry for Michelle was never going to get her where she needed to go." What did that strength and kind of fierceness mean to, you know, buoying you up and helping you move forward?
I think in the beginning, it made me, I was very hesitant to get on board with it. I was living in a facility, a hospital, where they were very open to accommodating me and very open to me staying in bed or in my wheelchair, and not it putting me in a place where I felt like I had to learn how to do the stairs or learn how to tie my own shoes. If you don't want to tie your shoes, a nurse will come do it for you. And now looking back on it, it has given me a lot of my independence. I learned a lot of things on my own, but I learned a lot of things from my mother because she pushed me to learn more and to go beyond the boundaries that the hospital sets for people. They are there to help you, but they're not going to be there if you want to be independent out in the community on your own.
So as you move around in the world independently and work full time, you've talked about how important working full time is, and the community that you create at work. You were mentioning this to me yesterday when we spoke. What was COVID like for you and that extreme isolation, given how much you rely on the contact you get from folks at work as well?
Yeah, so COVID was really, in the beginning, I was very depressed. I was still working at my previous job, and we all thought that it would only last maybe 2 weeks. And I left my stuff at my office. I went home. After about 3 weeks, I think, I realized this is here for a lot longer than we originally planned. I did see an advertisement on Kids Help Phone, on CTV, about Kids Help Phone, asking for people to volunteer. And I was staying in my bed a lot. So I was staying on the ventilator, which is the breathing machine. I was getting a sore on my elbow. I wasn't getting up to shower because if you don't have anywhere to go, why do you need to shower? And I was very isolated. My car battery died twice in 3 weeks because I wasn't taking an effort to go out. And when I did go out, everything was sold out. So the things that I need on a daily basis to live were sold out. So everyone was picking up gloves, distilled water, masks. I need those prior to the pandemic. So of course I need them during the pandemic. And there was, stores did a campaign where they asked people with disabilities and seniors to come in at 8 a.m. prior to them opening the store to the general public. But I don't get out of bed until 10:30. So it wasn't helpful to me to be allowed to come in the store that early. So kids' cell phone, I proceeded with that. And that kind of got me to a place where I could speak again with coworkers and people of the community. And it kind of just went from there. I was able to finally work from home at my old job. They set it up so that we could work from home. And gradually things got better as I relearned to join the community again.
Yeah. So part of that resilience was the strength that you got from your community, from feeling like you're a productive part of the community of the world, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what advice then would you have for leaders in the workplace about diversity and inclusion? What is something that people should remember in those cases to work harder to make that possible?
I find a lot of times when I went for job interviews, they would want, I had one company that said that maybe they would hire me if the government would give them money to support my salary. So they didn't want to pay for my salary, but they wanted the government to pay for me to be there. So I would say that people with disabilities typically try harder to be a productive member of the company. And people with disabilities know that we have more to prove typically. And we try harder, we show up, we're all typically on time, we make more of an effort in general. And I think that just to give people a chance and to realize that they're looking for a job because they want to probably just be involved and be part of a community like you do. And everyone needs the same opportunities as the next person. So I think just to be open to hiring people with that type of diverse abilities.
Of course. I mean, it just is such an important reminder about the contribution that you're making to your workplace, but also the one that your colleagues in your workplace is making in your life, enriching your life. Michelle, let me ask you, if you had to say, what are you proudest of in life or in career? What would you say to that?
So I'm very proud that I've been able to knock down any barriers that have been put in my place and achieve everything that I have today. I've come very far despite my physical limitations. And I'm also very proud of my advocacy. So the fact that I've been asked to do this interview, the fact that I was in an interview in 2017, I am being recognized for trying to break down barriers and for advocating for persons with disabilities. And hopefully I'm able to assist in the implementation of change in the future.
Yeah, I would say you are an amazing role model for that. Michelle, but let me ask, what's next for you? I mean, we've already established that you've defied all the odds since the day you were born. You're coming up to your 40th birthday in December.
I told you not to say that.
People won't believe it. If I said 30, they would believe it.
Okay.
So Michelle, just tell us, A, what that milestone means to you, and B, how you're planning to celebrate.
I think my mom is trying to get me to go to Florida to celebrate. So that might be a trip. And I am looking forward to seeing what's next for my career. I just joined the company in 2021. And so I have a lot to learn and a lot to share with them as well. And I'm hoping to be able to learn and grow in any way that I can. I may be trying to move locations from where I'm personally living in my residence now. And yeah, those are some things that I have lined up.
Well, that sounds pretty awesome. And one last question before I let you go. You've inspired us so much already today, Michelle, but what inspires you? Where do you find joy? Where do you find that for yourself?
So I think this comes full circle, like I spoke about earlier, that I do play hockey, and I think the networking of people with disabilities and without, I learn lots from both. And I find joy. I went to my mom's pool. I enjoy going bowling. I enjoy the zoo. So the activities that I can participate in, I try to find time and ways to do that.
Are we allowed to mention the boyfriend?
Oh, the boyfriend. Yes. So him and I cook together. We create great dishes. Mostly him. I am the recipe reader. He is the cook. And yeah, so we go to the beach. We watch movies together, and we create scrumptious dinners.
Well, that sounds pretty perfect. Michelle, I can't tell you what a treat and what an inspiration it has been talking to you. So thanks very much. Great to meet you.
It's been amazing, Lucy. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. All right, Michelle Kungle, in her own words, pretty incredible. I'm going to send it back to Stefan and Sarah. Thanks, guys.
Merci, Lucy. Well, I am inspired and truly humbled by what I've just heard. Listen, it's hard to be as inspiring as Michelle, but I think we can all embrace her message. We absolutely need to give people opportunities and allow people to surprise you. So, Michelle, thank you for your openness and your inspiration. It's truly remarkable. So, I just would leave you now. On va prendre une petite pause de 5 minutes et nous serons de retour avec vous sous peu. Merci. À bientôt. Welcome back. Welcome back. Our next segment is a chain reaction panel. It involves a series of intimate conversations between senior executives and emerging leaders.
Hi everyone, my name is Isha and I was given the honor of kicking off the chain reaction panel. Throughout this panel, you will see two people on the screen. One will be an emerging leader and the other one will be a senior executive. On behalf of all of the panelists, we hope this segment helps you reflect on your opportunities, your past struggles, and your accomplishments. We also hope that this session leaves you thinking about everything that you are capable of and more. So let's get into it. I would like to invite Louise Summers on screen.
Good morning, Isha.
Hi, Louise. Can you please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and anything interesting?
Absolutely. So good morning, everyone. My name is Louise Summers, and I'm the daughter of a wonderful woman who was a banker and who taught me some strong work ethic. I'm the mother of two wonderful, confident, powerful daughters, and I'm also the regional vice president of the Ottawa Central Market here in Ottawa for RBC.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And something that you might not know about me is that I come from a very large family. I had 19 uncles and aunts, and I have over 75 cousins.
Oh, wow. Big family. Must get loud in the house. Lots of fun. That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Louise. I would like to ask you a question. So over your career as you grew up, what progress and changes have you seen in the workplace regarding gender equality?
Great question. So I started my banking career in the 1990s, where everything was big, bold, big shoulder pads, power suits, etc. And so when I came into the workforce, I was ready to take on anything. And at that time, we saw women taking on more senior leadership roles. But one piece I saw was at the higher level, I did notice that it was very male dominated. But that changed throughout the years, and that's thanks to mentorship, sponsorship. We started to see organizations within our workforce come together to support women and preparing them in maybe non-traditional female roles. So throughout the years, I've seen great change. And I can actually say, and I say this when I speak to young women looking for career advice, is that every time I had a baby, I came back and had a promotion. So I used to say that if I'd had 7 babies, I'd probably be the CEO of RBC. But again, I never felt discrimination, but I can tell you that I worked hard, I got involved, and the more networking that you do, the better that prepares you for more senior roles at RBC. So, and again, throughout, I think the industry, we've seen some great strides on gender equality, but also I would say more around diversity and inclusion as well over the last few years.
Great. And as a student, I can personally relate to that. I've seen teachers, I've seen principals who are women, and even in the workplace, I've seen a lot of even my professors. But one thing I've noticed is that we're doing a great job in defeating that stigma and, really that brings women down essentially in the past. But now I feel like for the future generations, we really have to take that and spread it across the globe, not just in one area in our country, in our workplace, but really how can we create that for everyone? I agree. So Louise, what is your best advice for dealing with self-doubt? In times there are situations where we feel really motivated, feel really inspired, but there are also those days where we doubt our capabilities. So in those types of situations, what do you do?
Self-doubt, it's so hard, right? Everyone experiences that. Everyone is vulnerable. And you know what? We become our harshest critics. And so, it happens to everyone. And when it happens to me, I really need to pause and reflect on what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. And I always make sure, you speak to yourself, and I take a look at what I've accomplished in the past. And look at all the positive things that we've accomplished. I also have a circle of leaders that I'm close to. And if I'm in a situation where I'm really doubting, when you doubt, it's because you're afraid of making a mistake. And sometimes when we make a mistake, it's that opportunity to learn the most, right?
Right.
So I stay involved, connected with other leaders, other female leaders, and sometimes bouncing back ideas helps confirm that you're on the right track, that you're doing the right thing as well too. So what my two biggest pieces of advice would be pause, think, look at all the positive things you've accomplished in the past, and also keep a network close to you when you need to bounce ideas around.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. In times of self-doubt for me, I feel like it's because of my overthinking. I constantly think, what if this happens? What if that happens? And you're right, friends, family, your mentors, your role models, they really do help you stay grounded and really bring you back to reality and tell you can really do this, right? You're capable of great things. And Louise, my last question for you is, what inspires you?
What inspires me? Again, a great question. For me, it's teamwork and collaboration. I get very energized when I work with a group of people working towards a common goal, whether it's through different business line, whether it's sporting event, whether it's an activity that we're planning outside. I get very jazzed. I get very excited when I can see everyone taking on bits and pieces of a common goal, coming together and accomplishing that. So for me, that is very, very inspirational. And I love seeing teamwork coming together and accomplishing a goal.
Yeah, and touching on that, innovation. I feel like two minds together, multiple minds, you can come up with crazy ideas and actually use each other's strengths to really see through those crazy ideas. And that's where innovation starts. You need to work with people. You need to really get involved, and you never know what inspires you. So definitely, I think our experiences and talking like this with each other, you never know, that can really spark inspiration in each other. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
I will let you introduce the next panelist.
Absolutely. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Daniela. So Daniela, I'd like to ask you, so maybe just share with us here today who you are, what you do, and something that people might be surprised about you.
Hi, Louise. Thank you. So yes, my name is Daniela Aubrey. I'm the Deputy Chief Payments Officer and Head of Customer and Clients within the Payments Presto division at Metrolinx. It was a bit of a mouthful. So for those who aren't so familiar with Metrolinx, it's the regional transportation agency under the Ministry of Transportation. And Presto is the fare payment system used across 11 transit agencies across the GTHA. To be brief, my role is focused on customer experience, digital channels, product management, and client management. I really try to motivate myself and my team to focus on ways that we can consistently enhance and modernize our system and our product offerings for our clients and customers. Without getting into too much detail, one project I'm quite proud of with our team and a fantastic milestone is the recent delivery of credit card, but also Interact debit transactions on Up Express. This was a first in Canada for Interact debit on transit. And more recently, we've just launched credit card on other agencies throughout the GTHA, and more to come really over the next year. To close the loop about what I have done, before joining Metrolinx, I worked for CIBC as well as in a fintech for over 10 years. So it's safe to say I've got a massive passion for payments. And with respect to a surprise, Louise, some people are often surprised to hear that I'm a mom of 3. I've got a 9-year-old and 6-year-old twins, all girls. And similar to you, Louise, I think it really felt like anyways that every mat leave I had, I came back with a new challenge, a new promotion. So, always kind of that opportunity to roll up our sleeves and keep going. So really, I just try to be a strong female role model to them.
Well, Daniela, congratulations. You are a busy mom with a family of 3. And also what I really liked about some of the work you're doing is on the digitization of payment. I heard, Presto and debit and Interact, etc. So congratulations on that. My first question to you is, what do you look for in a leader, and what leadership qualities inspire you as an employee?
I think this is a great question. I've thought about this, as you change roles in your career, it really becomes more about what you're working on and who you're working for. And you really have some experiences in terms of what's most important. And to me, it's actually not that complicated. It's pretty simple. And so I look for 4 things. The biggest thing is just a leader who's supportive of myself and my team, really making sure that they're challenging us to grow, and also giving us the opportunity to kind of fail fast, learn, and come up with new ideas. Secondly, a leader that challenges the status quo. That could be in things like, what are the products that we're offering? What are innovations we could be bringing to the market? But also in how we work and the ways of working. So really that's that sort of ability to say, maybe we can do it differently. Maybe we can approach it differently, or maybe you can do it better than the last time. I find very motivating. The third thing for me is that teamwork, trust, and collaboration, which I think you hit on in that last question there. Just being able to come together as a team, being very transparent, kind of being authentic with each other. And so a leader that really fosters that type of culture and environment. And finally, the last thing, and as I've become a mom and as I've matured in life, this one I think has become just so much more important, and the pandemic really exacerbated it. And that's just a leader that supports that work-life balance and that ability of the flexibility that's required to kind of be a mom at 3 and have an active life outside of work, and also have a really challenging role.
Love all you hit on so many key pieces there: flexibility, authenticity, also how to fail fast. I mean, that is such a key piece, because that's how we innovate, that's how we learn, that's how we grow. So love all the pieces that you've kind of profiled there. Why is it important to be involved in organizations' activities outside of your day-to-day life? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think back at my own experience, kind of in my own path and kind of getting involved with different things, I think we have a tendency to be really head down in our roles. We work so hard, and we kind of think, like I used to think to myself, okay, once I hit this milestone, once I deliver this project, I'll be ready for the next role. And there's going to be somebody waiting to tap me on the shoulder and give me that promotion. And then you're kind of managing all the things outside of work, like, taking care of the kids and volunteering and taking care of family members. And so it really felt to me like doing one more thing I just could not take, like going to a conference or joining an organization. It just felt like I didn't have time for it. And so, I'll tell you about kind of the first Women in Payment Symposium that I came to. I was, in that kind of mindset, sitting at my desk, working away and really trying to kind of deliver. And a coworker said, "You're going to come with me to this symposium." And I said, I don't have time. I've got way too many things. There's a big RFP due. It's not happening. And she said, "No, you're coming." And so I went. And at that point in my career, I had taken on a promotion. I had 3 girls, all kind of 3 and under. And so every day I questioned really whether I should continue to work, continue to take challenging roles, or whether I need to kind of take a step back in my career. And at this symposium, I was so inspired by the women that were there, that were leaders, that had kids, that had these wonderful stories of, how they were balancing different challenges in their lives, but still really kind of inspiring in what they were able to do and navigate their careers. So for me, I walked away very inspired. I felt like if they could do it, I could do it. And I also realized what kind of role model did I want to be for my girls. And for me, that was to kind of keep going and show them that you can have a successful career as a woman. So I would say, if you're not involved in any organization or activities outside of your day-to-day, I hope this kind of inspires you to give it a try. I've found I've made wonderful connections. I've learned things when it comes to kind of product development and innovation. You can see what the trends are happening. When you step out of your office, some of these connections start coming together, and you can come back actually, more effective than before.
Danielle, I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, the power of women coming together and networking. And like you said, when you just think your cup is that full, you can still add to it and grow from being out in different activities and all that.
That's it.
Daniela, maybe in 15 seconds, one last question. What motivates you?
So I guess what motivates me is being that role model for my girls, and really when it comes to fostering that environment that my team feels like they can come and be their true selves every day when they come to work, and they can be authentic and they can really bring their ideas and innovations. And so kind of cutting through some of those barriers of your certain ways and certain scenarios and really just being yourself, and encouraging that diversity of thought, I think is so important. So yeah, that's really what motivates me, Louise.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Thank you for your time. And I think you're going to be inviting our next guest.
I am, yes. Great chatting with you. And I really wanted to take a moment and invite Judith Robertson to join me on screen.
Hi, Daniela.
Hello, how are you?
Great, thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, wonderful to meet you as well. Welcome. Thanks for your time today. I wanted to start by asking you to share who you are, what you do, and what is something that people might be surprised to find out about you.
Okay, sure. So I am currently the Commissioner of the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. So that is a federal agency whose role in name, of course, is consumer protection and financial services. So at the federal level, it's principally banks. And our role is like a sister role to OFSI, in that OFSI is the prudential, making sure the balance sheets are fine. Our role is market conduct, so how financial institutions interact with their clients. So we're a regulator, and we also have a role in promoting financial literacy. So we do research and education, because of course a better informed consumer is a better protected consumer. So that's my current role. This is my first federal public service role. Previously, I had a private sector career for way too many years in Canada, the US, and the UK in financial services. So it's been quite an interesting journey. The fun fact about me that's kind of relevant to this panel is that when I was in business school in the mid-'80s, I was actually one person selected to appear in an NFB documentary about women in business, and it was called The Class of Promise, because my business school class had a grand total of 20% women, and it was considered an enormous milestone. So they did a documentary on that. So that gives you a bit of an impression of, wow, things really have changed in the span of one person's career.
Yeah, it gave me that heart fluttering moment, and I'm sure wasn't the easiest environment to be in. And I too actually just recently moved from the private sector to the public sector, so maybe I can pick your brain about some tips offline on that one. I really wanted to also spend some time talking to you about what has been your most challenging leadership role.
Well, of course, the most challenging leadership role is the one you're in. And so, you know, being the head of a federal agency, particularly one that has the opportunity to impact Canadians so directly, is very daunting. It's an honor. It's a privilege. It's also a great responsibility. So I do find it very challenging. It's also very challenging in the environment we're in, which is, so notwithstanding random pandemics, but also just tremendous change. And you're at the forefront of that in the payment space, but certainly our whole way of dealing in the financial world is changing. Lots of great improvements and opportunities, but also lots of potential for things to go a bit sideways. So that's a very challenging thing. But I'd say more generally, the most challenging leadership roles are the ones where you don't have the title, right? It's one thing to be the commissioner. People have to listen to me, whether they agree with me or not. But I think something that everybody can relate to is quite often you're in positions like on a committee or even in a meeting, right, where you are called upon to play a leadership role because you know something or you disagree or you think in a different way, and finding the tools and the ability to lead through influence, through argument, through consensus building are some of the most challenging. And I would just encourage people to identify those, realize they're challenging, but also realize that those are the ones that are probably the most meaningful in many ways.
I would completely agree. I'm thinking you just kind of triggered, some memories of teams or job interviews, and everybody's very focused on, well, how many people are reporting to me? Because I really want leadership experience. And I've said to them exactly like you just said, every time you sit in a meeting, every time you have a one-on-one, every time you're on a committee or working on your project, you have an opportunity to lead. You have an opportunity to influence, and therefore you are people leading in a different way, obviously in that sort of non-traditional definition of it. But you get that experience and you garner it. And I think looking for those opportunities and seeing each one as an opportunity and to do that, I think is just a fantastic example. So Judith, if you could give future women in leadership one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, so I can't reduce it to one. And advice is one of those very tricky things, because everything that is true, don't you find the opposite is also true on occasion? So there's nothing that works all the time, but I would say sort of three things. One is get started, right? Like that's the very best thing you can do, is just get started no matter what situation you're in. And I think that goes to the self-doubt question as well. Just get started, figure out a way to start. The second is to stick with it. Nobody's career is a straight line, lots of side steps, lots of diverse paths. And as you look back, it all seems to make sense, but at the time it can be very discouraging. And the third is to try to focus on the outcomes. And that's really where the leadership, I think, comes in. Is not so much the task, but the outcomes. And then the tiniest little thing I would add is the public service aspect. I really appreciated your comments about joining industry committees and using your precious time to do that. I would say that I consider that public service. If we care about our industry, if we care about our economy, if we care about our country, we deserve to have people like us invest our time in ensuring that it is the best it can be. Because without that, we're not going to be satisfied with the outcome we have to live in. So that would be my fourth bit of advice.
I love that. I couldn't have said that better. And I think that also that idea of you're exactly where you need to be in your career in the moment, and understand that kind of, although it can be tough, if you stick to it, you'll come out the other side with maybe some scars, but also with a lot of growth. So I love that as well. Thanks, Judith. And my last question, what motivates you?
Well, I actually I'm also a mother of two girls, but I call them the adults who used to be my children. But I was very motivated all the way through about being a good role model, both as a person, but also as a professional. I'm seeing that effort actually has resonated with them. Not that they have at all modeled their career choices on me in any way. In fact, maybe the opposite. But certainly in a fearlessness to make their own choices, which is really what it's all about and what you want. So I am very motivated by, demonstrating that your life can be as you want it to be. that you have choices to make in your personal and professional life, and one does not have to be at the exclusion of the other. And so I'm very motivated to continue that as I move into the future phases of my professional and personal life.
That's a great motivator, and obviously resonates completely with me. So thank you for that. So Judith, I'm going to pass it over to you. I'm going to thank you for your time with me. It's been a pleasure, and we'll move on.
Great, thank you. So nice chatting with you. And now I get to turn the tables on Jennifer. So I think Jennifer's coming on screen. Let me introduce Jennifer Dimmock. Welcome.
Thank you, Judith. It was really wonderful hearing about your experiences. I'm excited to chat about that too.
Well, so now it's your turn. So you get to tell us who you are, a little bit about you, and maybe a fun fact.
Well, so I'm a wife and mother to two. There seems to be a theme here of daughters. I have two little girls, 3.5 and 18 months. So I'm in the thick of those toddler preschool years. And my husband is right now trying to corral them downstairs and keep them quiet. So if you hear shrieks of laughter or shrieks otherwise, you'll know what that is. But I'm also a professor of organizational behavior and human resources at the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa. And in my role there, I really study the relationship between people and work. So my PhD is in a field called industrial organizational psychology. And it really is about studying the psychology of people and relationships and teams and managers and employees in workplace environments. So I'm certainly very busy. There's so much to study. And in terms of what people would most be surprised by, I'm a closeted general contractor. I absolutely love nothing more than getting my hands dirty, figuring out how things work, fixing things in my own home. I am by no means good at it. No one will be hiring me anytime soon, but I just love figuring out how something works, being able to then implement it myself in a very tangible way, which is not something I often get to do in my role as a professor. So yes, I don't think most people would imagine that from me.
No, that definitely was a bit of a surprise out of left field, but I have to say I kind of relate to that, not from the contracting point of view, but don't you find that when our professional lives are very much thought oriented and maybe theoretical, that sometimes just having a very practical task is very satisfying. So I think it's a kind of a nice counterbalance.
100%. Yes. There's something about just having a different part of your brain working.
Exactly. Tactile. Well, that's great. Well, so let's dive into a little bit your professional side, because I know everybody would love to get some insights from you on how we in our workplace foster a better environment for mental health and resilience. And we've all suffered personally, but also and witnessed the suffering in our organization over the past couple of years. So what advice have you got for us on that? What would you say?
Well, Judith, you're right. In the last couple of years, so much of this emphasis on mental health and well-being and resilience has kind of come to the forefront. And we've all been talking about these topics for the better part of 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years if you're in a particularly progressive workplace environment. But never has the spotlight been so strongly on these topics. And I often have leaders asking me, if you had one piece of advice or, what can I do to support my employees? And the answer is really to support yourself first. And it may sound very simple, but there's, as we know, there is sometimes a difference between saying it and doing it. And it's the old oxygen mask on the airplane scenario. And there's lots of research that says that leaders who take care of themselves and model that behavior of that self-care to their employees are more likely to have employees who are also in a position to be healthier and higher performers. So it's such a really emphasizing to leaders to take care of themselves, to prioritize their own well-being as the same way that they prioritize team performance. And once we're talking about how health and performance go hand in hand, I think that's where we see progress in terms of, at least in the research. And from just a very human perspective, is for leaders to be human, to get to know their employees as people, to lead with empathy and compassion. And that makes a difference. We're seeing this, the great resignation and the quiet quitting phenomenon that's, being talked about right now. So much of that is people feeling undervalued and unappreciated and uncared for. And leaders can show that they care, because most of the time they do. They just don't know how to show it and need kind of that, you should show it. You're not crossing a boundary by asking about your, employee's weekend or their family, or if there's anything you can do to support them in their role. That's part of your job.
Thank you. That's it's so interesting, isn't it? That what you're saying sounds very sensible, but also backed up by research. And yet not complicated. Although, I'm sure you probably also have the experience that that's actually sometimes hard to do in fact, because we have, as leaders, competing modeling or conflicting modeling, maybe, about, what we should do, demonstrating your authority, always modeling behaviors to emulate, as opposed to the more human side. So maybe you can help us reconcile that seeming conflict between, what a leader is supposed to look like versus an effective leader, especially in the areas of mental health.
Absolutely. It really comes down to behaviors. And we talk about it in terms of the types of support that leaders can provide. And it's about not only role modeling, which we've already talked about, but destigmatizing mental illness and destigmatizing conversation about mental health in general. So just talking about it, talking about your own struggles without going into detail that is, too much for you. And leading with instrumental support. This is critical, that leaders help facilitate resources that are going to support their employees. Make sure your employees have the tools that they need to do their job. Just like a general contractor would need the hammers and the nails and the plungers, your employees need tools. So, and those tools in our world right now change almost daily. So being on top of that as much as possible can help bridge that gap of being, an empathetic leader, but also an instrumental leader.
Oh, that's really helpful distinction. I remember someone said something to me once that I thought was really relevant around the stigma, which is, nobody finds it surprising that someone wears glasses, right? And yet that's to correct, right, some kind of need. Yep. So why is there a stigma around needing some other resource or support? So
excellent analogy. Excellent. Yeah, so true.
Is there a leader story that is influential to you that you'd like to share? Is there an example that comes to mind?
Sure. I'll very briefly, I have this fantastic mentor that has really embodied all of these things that I've talked about and leading by example. And it sounds cliche, but the best thing that she's taught me is that teamwork does make the dream work. And just as much as it takes, and to surround yourself with people who are more knowledgeable than you, who have different skill sets than you, and to learn together and to grow together. And just as much as it takes a village to raise a family, it also takes a village to develop a career. And I've learned that from her, is that to really surround yourself with people and be someone who helps to surround others in developing yourself as an individual, as a professional, and and whatever roles you have outside of your work.
That's excellent. Yeah, because it is work, right?
It is work.
Needs to be intentional. And how lucky for you to have a mentor like that. That's not everybody's experience, so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so we're reaching the towards the end of our time. I would like to ask you, a little bit more general question about your work, and what drives you, and maybe some general advice, if you have it, for others as we all navigate the various stages of our careers.
Well, I think, and I'm in the fairly junior phase of my career, and I think the best thing I'm trying to live, at least day to day, is to do what means something to you, to do work that is meaningful. And it doesn't mean every day is going to be meaningful, but having that bigger picture of how am I going to make a difference, or how is this going to fulfill me? And that looks different for everybody. For me right now, I'm doing research on perinatal mental illness and pregnancy loss, because those are things that are personally and professionally meaningful to me. And they're difficult topics, but I think and believe that I can make a difference in the lives of working women by researching these topics. So it's the advice of find something that means something to you, and that will make the slog days, the less desirable days, worth it. So thank you so much, Judith.
Pleasure.
This is wonderful.
We could go on and on.
I know we could.
I know.
So
I will say goodbye.
Thank you very much. It was lovely having this chat. And I will welcome Justine Hendricks. Now, Justine, you're in the hot spot. Thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here, Jennifer.
So just like everybody else, we'll go ahead and get started with our first kind of set of questions of who are you, Justine? What's your background? What's your role? And a fun fact or something that we'd be surprised to learn about you.
Yeah, no, sure. So in the spirit of keeping the trend going, Jennifer, I guess I'm a mom as well. So mother of 3 girls. So we're keeping up with 2 trends. And one is a set of twins as well. So another trend that's going on. And they're 13, the twins are 13, and my eldest is 17 years old. A bit about my background. I've been in the public sector for now 18 years, but prior to that, I was 10 years in banking. And I remember Louise's suits, and she was an inspiration to me then as well. So we worked side by side at RBC, but that's for other stories that we can share at another point in time. So what I do is I work for Export Development Canada, EDC. It's a crown corporation, a federal crown corporation. And the mandate of EDC is to actually support Canadian companies be successful selling their goods and their services internationally, right? So trade. So we're part bank, part insurance company. We have a knowledge business. And the role that I have at EDC is I'm the first chief corporate sustainability officer. So we underwrite all of our transactions against ESG considerations. So I have a policy shop for ESG. I also run all the initiatives around our net zero commitments. And I also, under my preview as an executive vice president, I have the innovation agenda for EDC, all the enablement capabilities, and also some governance and control management for EDC. Maybe fun fact about me, I went to university dreaming of becoming an architect. So I do agree with, do what you love. Unfortunately, I would say I turned out to be a banker. So I still love architecture. I finance some buildings, but and people are often surprised to find out about me.
May I ask what led to the departure from the architecture passion to banking?
I could say it was Louise, but I didn't know her back then. But when I graduated, I would say it was tough times for a recession, right? And the architect profession was very limited in terms of openings. So financial dynamics and pragmatism had to step in and say, you got to do something, kiddo. So RBC was very willing to receive me, and I love my years at RBC. So that is the true story of why I did not become an architect.
Well, that's the reality of balancing passion and pragmatism. But it sounds like you have a lot of passion for what you're doing now and what you've done in your remarkable career.
It's been, and a few others mentioned the public service, right? So I've been in it for almost 20 years. And I'd be remiss if I didn't share with the audience the huge feeling of accomplishment and making a difference you get in public service. Not that you don't in the private sector, but you end up touching, I'll say, files or initiatives that are very strategic. The impact you have can be quite tangible. So, if you're a passionate Canadian, it's a great place to dive in and have a fantastic career.
That's amazing. So on that line, what advice would you give to a young woman entering the workforce or entering your field, entering into the public sector or entering into the world of finance and banking? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, no, it was a great question. And I too probably have more than one piece of advice. So the first would be is don't shy away from the possibilities of a career in finance. I would also share, I think curiosity is probably for me, the single biggest skill that you need, right? So be curious so that you can learn along the way a lot faster. And then it'll open your eyes to, I guarantee it, all sorts of things like you may have not known before, or helps you connect the dots. And I think that can make a huge difference in your career from a success point of view and a fulfillment point of view, right? Just the things that you learn along the way. I'd also advise to make sure that you surround yourself, right, as a leader, right? Like, I think surrounding yourself with good people with diversified capabilities. So the whole diversity and inclusion, to me, can make the difference between, a fantastic project and a huge game changer, for example, right? And surrounding yourself with people is, to be clear, not people that are thinking like you. It's actually deliberately going to get a diverse set of folks, because that really allows you to satisfy that curiosity, get different perspectives that can then lead you, the right way where you need to go. And the other thing too is, and I've heard it a few times on the interview, like, leaders are spread pretty thin, right? Like, we've got the things we're trying to lead, you've got your other meetings you have to do, and you have these teams that, are looking up to you in terms of what do I need to do next. So I always come to the table, and it is tough, but the time you invest in your people, like your teams or your colleagues, you will reap the rewards of it many times over, right? So never forget that people come to work with a desire to do good work, right? Not to not do good work. So understanding and picking up on some of those subtleties, I think, can really go a long way in terms of your insights and then how you decide to coach, right? Or to bring people along.
Yes, you're speaking my language. This is organizational psychology and leadership right there. But yes, it's investing in your people that is an investment in your team and yourself and the organization. And we see from data continually that human capital is the biggest asset of any organization, and helping leaders navigate that. So thank you for sharing that advice. And I'm glad you shared more than one piece of advice. So with all of the good decisions that you've made along the way, has there been anything that you regret or look back on and think, oh, I wish I would have done that differently or approached that differently? Is there anything, can we learn from your mistakes?
So I guess first when I saw the question, I reacted to the question in the sense that, Jennifer, to me, I think looking back and regretting, I have to say, it doesn't fit well with me, because I think we all have to make decisions, right? And if you focus on keeping the status quo, you're essentially making a decision. You're not delaying it, right? So I guess the first thing I wanted to say is, to me, it's less about regretting, because I see that more on the negative side, and reflecting back on some of the decisions you've made or things you've done, and saying, could I have done it differently to get a different outcome, right? And sometimes the answer is yes, or sometimes the answer is no, right? So it becomes about, what do you learn from this cycle, and then you apply and you adjust along the way. So, but to that end, something I'll say I wish I would have done more often, because I may at times have hesitated. My analogy is about when you have a team, right, and things are humming and people are doing what they need to do, sometimes as a leader, that there's something perhaps not going well, but because it's driving to your outcome, you go, we'll deal with it later, right? The typical reaction. So I would share with you and the audience, don't deal with it later, right? Because it only gets bigger to deal with down the road. And the analogy I have is kind of the conveyor belt, right? Sometimes you have to stop the conveyor belt, get everybody together. It feels at the time that it's the biggest mistake you've ever done, but actually it will be the best investment in time you ever do, right? Because you can level set, you put issues on the table, and some of them can be really tough, right? But I think being able to face that conversation will inspire a lot of people and gain huge credibility in terms of your willingness and your desire to manage and bring people together.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm so glad that you had that same reaction to that question that I did of, gosh, regret. That's such a negative, and how helpful is that for moving forward? But as you the way that you've talked about it, of thinking about how to do things differently in a positive way, and how to move forward. I appreciate that perspective so much, and do my best to embody that as well. And sometimes it works better than others. As we know, sometimes that's the reality. And very quickly, a last question, because I think it's important one, and we should end on a positive note for our discussion, is what inspires you?
Yeah, no, so quickly. So at the highest level, what inspires me is having impact, right? And, I would say in the public service, that's really what you get, right? The ability to have tremendous impact. I also, we all have our different passions. For me, along the way, I had people that were great mentors to me and sponsors. So I have a passion for youth leadership. And, I think helping them prepare for the future is something that really inspires me. So I invest a lot of time with, the university, the young professionals at EDC or other circles. So I think that's really important. And this whole notion of taking 2 minutes, to connect with people. The story I want to share with the audience is, when you become an executive, sometimes some of the perks is you get a special parking space, or, you're closest to the door. And my kids have over the years come to EDC, and for the longest time, I would never take my spot. I'd go to the bottom of the garage. And, the girls said, well, why do you do that, Mommy? I said, well, because the bottom of the garage is where the office is for all the maintenance people, right? So every morning I come in, I would see the manager, say good morning. And at night, I'd see some of the workers as they were coming in to keep the building clean. And one day, one of the workers came up to me and he says, ma'am, you've been saying good morning and good night to me for 4 years. I'd like to know your name. And so I said, oh, of course. So we exchanged. And, I find out from this person, they're immigrants to Canada, they're putting 3 kids through school. They were boys though, so they go against our trend. But you know what I mean? Like, they're just, they're human beings like everybody else. And it takes everybody doing their part in order to be successful, right? So to me, I find it so important to take those 2 minutes, and just that will make my month, right? It's not a short-lived impact, and then you make a new friend, right? So to me, it's really worth taking those moments and acknowledging people around you as you work.
Those small things can make such a big difference in your own life and the lives of others. Yeah. Absolutely inspirational. Thank you so much, Justine.
My pleasure.
This.
Yeah, no, same here. So over to me to put Isha on the hot seat. So welcome back, Isha Obaid, and really looking forward to our little chat. So why don't we kick off with everybody's questions? If you can share with us a little bit who you are, what you do, and something that people may be surprised to find out about you.
Thanks for inviting me back on. I am currently a student at University of Ottawa's Telfer School of Management. I'm specializing in HR management. I'm currently completing my 3rd co-op term with the public sector. And something surprising that people find out about me is that I have a sister who's 12 years younger than me. So people usually get shocked when they hear that. Every day she grows up and she's becoming this spitting image of me, and sort of in line with today's theme of inspiring women, I feel the pressure of being a great role model for her and coaching her to be the best version of herself. And I often find myself forgetting that it's okay for her to also make mistakes, because no matter how hard you try, it really was these kinds of situations that really build you to be who you are today and to be that confident woman that you can be. And so I have to remind myself that it's okay if she doubts herself, and if she feels that this is because I'm a girl, or she's faces those situations. She just needs to learn how to deal with them, and that's what's going to make her a better version of herself, not really avoiding the situations, but really addressing them and acknowledging them.
No, it's a great observation, Isha, and also would you agree? It's you grew up 12 years ahead of your sister, and you probably can witness some changes within your circles that perhaps weren't there 12 years ago, right? So then your sister comes in and she's having some similar emotions. So the ability to recognize that and continue the encouragement, and like you say, I'll say allow her to do her learnings and her mistakes, right? It's tough though, I'll admit, whether it's a sister or kids, you so want to protect them so that they don't walk away with this feeling of a failure or anything. But it's really good that you can acknowledge it and recognize it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't hop on the trend of 3 kids just yet, girls, but with my 12-year-old younger sister, she's definitely like a child. So
yeah. Yeah, well, you know what? I'll say every data point counts. So, we can make a decision. You're definitely adding to the trend. So really happy that you shared that with us. So let me jump into a couple of questions. So maybe the first one is, as you've been presented, no doubt, with different opportunities along the way, how have they and those opportunities shaped who you are today?
Definitely for the better, have shaped me into a better person. I'm from Pakistan, and I often visit back home, and I see everyone's presented with their fair share of opportunities, with different set of opportunities. And I see the difference in opportunities that were presented to me. And it's very easy when you go back home and you see people from your own family and how different their lives are. And you realize that, this could be me in a different world if I didn't have the opportunities that were presented to me. So definitely shaped me and brought me to where I am today. In terms of university, the knowledge that it's given me, the network that it's provided for me, I mean, they presented the opportunity for me to pursue. So it's definitely helped me get me where I am today. And even from, like, for example, I'm doing co-op. So from a workplace setting, the professionalism that you learn, and then the formality and the work ethics that you learn, those are presented to you through opportunities. So even from a professional perspective, definitely these opportunities have made me who I am today. And it's through these opportunities you meet your mentors, you meet your role models, and you learn from their experiences, their opportunities. And it's also through them that you build your own opportunities and you discover that excellence going forward. So definitely it's changed me for the better.
No, that's fantastic to hear, and so glad you shared as well where your original home is from. You know, I used to, when I was at the Royal Bank, you know, one of my customers I remember at the time was the ambassador of Pakistan to Canada, and he used to talk to me about his daughters and you know how the opportunity that it presented him to them for him to be here. So I still remember that, and in terms of some of the things that he did in order to make sure that they would, you know, be able to have access to education and, you know, to do really what they wanted to do. So, you know, I'm so happy that you took advantage of those opportunities, and you know, it's helping you grow in terms of who you are today.
Yeah, definitely not to miss out on those opportunities and use them to their fullest potential. Sometimes we underlook opportunities, but you never know. You're given opportunity every single day. It's up to you how you take it and move on with it.
Exactly. So if we kind of shift a little bit to leaders or leader considerations, right? What would you say within the leaders that you know, or you know, even the leadership you've had, what would you say is maybe a quality that is often underrated?
An underrated quality, I'm a big empath. Like, I feel a lot for others. I often find myself putting myself in other people's shoes. So if I were to put myself in the shoes of my leaders, I feel like something that I overlook in them is their courage. It takes a lot to be a leader. You know, you have to go through a lot to be where you are. And so I feel like from the leaders that I've seen, and whether it's, you know, professors in school, in uni, or my parents, or even in a workplace setting, my managers, they had to face a lot. They had a lot of challenges, and even to continue on and grow from them, it takes courage. And to be responsible for so many people, to guide them and mentor them, it takes courage. And I think that that's something that we just overlook and we kind of expect, but it's there, it's on them. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you picked that one, because it's true, right? In terms of, and as a person that recognizes it, you can kind of look out for it, right? And what I would say is, as a leader, you cannot imagine the impact it has when somebody, you know, whether it's in your team or outside, and they recognize that and actually take 2 seconds to let you know, right? Because that ends up coming back and paying huge dividends, right? So it's a really it's a great example, Isha. Sometimes something that maybe is you know, behind the scenes that we don't catch, or we just simply don't we don't take the time to recognize it, and the challenge that it may cause, right?
Right, exactly.
So how about in terms of if you think back of all the conversations that you've heard today with all these leaders, like, what's something that's maybe stood out for you in terms of a theme, or some comments that have been made that you would take away with the call today?
Something that stuck with me from today's conversations is that we are mothers, we are students, we're leaders, we're experts, we're executives, and we're partners. You know, we have wives, and we're capable, we're knowledgeable, we're experts, and we're great at what we do. And we get lost in our responsibilities, and we have so many multiple roles that we play in our lives, so many priorities, but we build each other up. And with talks like these and an event like this, we stay grounded and we feel inspired and motivated. And yeah, so that's something that I definitely took away, that it takes these kind of conversations and bringing down the stigma and really lifting each other up.
No, that's fantastic, Isha, and you know, glad that you're sharing that with the audience. And you're right? Like, to me, as I was looking, as so many people said, "Oh, people are surprised that I have kids and I work," right? Just goes to show you that, to your point, we are experts, we can do it, we can make a difference, and the world is a better place for it, right? So it's a really good way to perhaps invite the rest of the guests back. And I think at this point, I'm to turn the mic over to you to close us off on this fantastic conversation.
For sure. Welcome back, everyone. It's nice to see everyone on screen together. And I just wanted to add on to our conversation with Justine. We have to be the best versions of ourselves, and that includes, growing and keeping in touch with our network like Louise does, to stay grounded and motivated, and to be involved in activities outside of our workplace like Daniela, or to polish ourselves and pursue leadership opportunities and executive roles like Judith, or even figuring out how things work and then fixing them and improving them like Jennifer, and to work with organizations that have projects that you're passionate about, and not having any regrets, but really learning from our mistakes like Justine. So with that, I'm going to end up this conversation. I certainly will cherish this opportunity of reflecting both on how far we have come from previous generations, and even how far we still have to go for future generations and for ourselves, really. So I hope everyone took something special from this panel. I would like to close off this segment by thanking all of you for joining us and being willing to share your personal experiences and even vulnerable experiences, as well as your advice and expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, quel beau partage. C'est incroyable la sagesse qu'on a reçue dans ce panel, les bons conseils. On prenait des notes puis on n'était pas capable de suivre. C'est vraiment fantastique. Thank you all for making us better leaders. You really, really inspire us all, and we are going to, rethink about what we just heard and continue to grow, and knowing that to take care of others, you need to take care of yourself. So starting by taking care of us, which is hard sometimes in our busy schedule. So this is great. Talking about leaders, some people are natural leaders. Our next two ladies were born into it. In our final segment, we will meet Maggie. She's 7 years old. And our sister Avery, who's 10 years old, who was behind the script, camera, and editing to put it all together. So let's hear the words of wisdom they capture from some seasoned leaders. Prenez un moment pour savourer ce moment.
Hi, I'm Addie, and I'm going to be the boss someday, but I still have a lot to learn. So I need some advice. If you don't know what advice means, it means learning. Question 1. What should I know about being the boss?
Let's start with the fact that sometimes you have to take tough decisions. And I want to state right up front that taking a tough decision doesn't mean you have to be tough on people. Hard on the issues, but not necessarily on the people.
Being the leader means that, you have some powers, but with great powers comes great responsibility. A little bit of a cliche, although it's an old adage that, exists, way before the Spider-Man movies were around. But it's something that I remind myself of every day.
The best thing about being a boss is really getting to set the work culture, values, and structure as a reflection of yourself. The hardest part about being a boss is not always having that sounding board or that support that you might have if you were elsewhere in the team. So you need to build a support team.
I think being a good boss means taking a lot of responsibilities. For example, if your team made a mistake, you are responsible for it, no matter what. Only in this way can you earn the trust from your team members.
Okay, so when you're the boss, you need to remember that people are important, you gotta earn respect. Mistakes happen and you are automatically responsible for it. You also gotta earn trust. Oh yeah, and it's not easy. Question 2. What's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
The worst advice that I was given was to blend in, be more respectful. I think that this blending in concept really minimizes you, your insights, and your opportunities. So yes, be respectful, but I think it's okay to stand out and really make yourself bigger, be a bigger part of the picture in the conversation that you're having within your organization.
Let sleeping dogs lie. You'll often hear, don't push that. Let it go. Nobody needs to worry about that. And when you think about certain things like behavior, you can't let bad behavior continue.
That's pretty bad advice. So you shouldn't leave problems to get worse, and you shouldn't try so hard to be like everybody else. But Donna, if your puppy wants to sleep, I'd probably let him. What about the best advice?
There's a quote that I read from an author that says, "Nothing will kill a great employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one." And that's something that really resonated with me because I've always prided myself on building very effective team, very successful teams. And, you know, sometimes you put a group of people together and you might have like some great people with some great experience, but they're not always necessarily the best fit for that job.
You should never be discouraged from doing something because it's risky. In finance, you can only get a high return when taking high risks.
Great, I think I've got it. Always be yourself and be proud. Take care of the people around you. Try hard things and don't give up. Take risks, but not with your big sister's things or your little brother's toys. Question 3. I'm still learning a lot, like tying my shoes. What is something you're still learning?
Patience. Always learn to have patience. I'm always learning from my organization and from the people that I work with. I think as a leader, we have to be curious. That is absolutely the most important part of continuously growing, challenging your team, and creating a culture of learning and innovation.
The art to accept failure peacefully is still a work in progress for me. There are so many barriers if we want to create something new. Just hoping that we can help the young generation succeed earlier and easier with what we are doing today.
Something that I'm still learning, I think when you're working in a large organization, when you're managing large teams, I think one of the things that I constantly reminding myself is that, you know, we're dealing in the business of humans, and that not everyone learns the same way or not everyone has the same motivations. So I need to make sure that I fully understand the situation, you know, before jumping to conclusion.
Something that I'm still learning is the fact that I'm always learning. I don't think the learning is ever done, especially when you're in a leadership position. So I am learning to continually be more accessible and more supportive to my team to help them grow, and continuing to recognize that the more that I learn and I think that I know, there's actually more for me to learn. And so really, I think also learning to have that team and lean on that team for support, because all leaders need support to be successful.
Wow, that's good advice. Back to work.
C'était vraiment remarquable, les filles. Adi, Avery, vous avez fait tellement un bon travail. Des vrais future leaders. Stéphane, est-ce que tu vas essayer de les recruter?
Ouais, j'aimerais bien. Ouais, je pense qu'il y a du potentiel pour l'avenir de Telfer. Là. J'aimerais bien avoir des étudiantes de ce calibre-là à l'école. Very fantastic, great work. And it just reminds us that, every day we can take an opportunity to support and help youth grow and give them a voice. Doesn't matter how young they are.
Enfin, s'ils ils vont à Telfer, j'espère que tu vas les encourager à venir faire des stages coop au gouvernement du Canada.
For sure.
So that brings us to the end of the formal part of our event. Thank you so much all for participating. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to all of those behind the scene who made that possible. That was a great, great event. I'm very, very happy to have the chance to be part of it. And Stefan and I are now joining you to join us for the live virtual networking portion of the event. So come and meet some of our speakers, come and meet us. It's very informal and it's ready to have a chance to chat. So the link is in your email in the description of today's event on YouTube. See you soon. Bonne fin de journée tout le monde.
Bye.